Welcome to the Parkinson's Disease Education Show, where we demystify the disease and empower you as the person with Parkinson's disease to reach your true potential. The content contained on this show is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be a replacement for information or advice that you receive from your in-person medical or therapy professionals. If you haven't already, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and for an even more personalized experience, please ask us about our memberships. Now, without further ado, let's start the show. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, wherever you're watching from. Dr. Michael here. It's time for What's Next Wednesday, and I'm excited to talk to you today about our upcoming content for the podcast and YouTube. And that's obviously what this video is about if you're new to this. This should be live on Facebook and YouTube, so please do leave your comments live during the stream, and I can interact with you here. Only price of admission to the live stream is to like the video, and if you feel extra generous, please do share it with other people so they know what's going on. Without further ado, we're going to talk about our subject for the day, which is going to be atypical Parkinsonism versus Parkinson's disease. That's going to be the subject of the next video that is going to, or I say video, it's an episode that would be on video and podcast form, but primarily YouTube. And that is going to be on that topic. So I wanted to talk about that because obviously that's been on the list of recurring subjects I've been putting polls out about, particularly on the YouTube channel, asking what people want to hear about and just giving a list of 2 or 3 topics. And that one keeps showing up as a popular topic, but not quite as popular as other topics. So instead of continuing to push it off into the future, I decided to cover that and another topic that's been in the polls recently, and then continue to go from there. And this was one of the more popular topics that people continually wanted to hear about. So there are some conditions that mimic Parkinson's disease. And if you're not familiar with that term, atypical Parkinsonism, it refers to conditions that are similar to Parkinson's disease, or maybe show up similarly on the surface, but actually are a completely different diagnosis and may even be treated differently, have a different prognosis or progression, that kind of thing. And so, for example, Parkinson's meds may not be effective for some conditions. But anyway, this is a very commonly misdiagnosed, or these conditions are commonly misdiagnosed because of their similarity to Parkinson's disease. And I've actually personally known people that were misdiagnosed with Parkinson's, treated for Parkinson's disease, and then later on discovered they had this completely different condition. And so I wanted to ask you all a question on the live stream. And I was going to put this up on the YouTube particularly. I was going to ask how many of you are familiar with the term atypical Parkinsonism. And I meant to do this beforehand. I apologize. I'll just say, it'll just be a yes or no answer. We'll make it simple. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to keep that up live for now. But anyway, if you're here, let me know you're here. I want to say hello, give you a shout out. And if you're on YouTube watching, that poll is live now, just to get a kind of a general feel of who has heard of this term before. Parkinson's plus is another name for these conditions. So examples of these conditions, I was going to give you that while we were on the stream. Examples would be dementia with Lewy bodies. That can be a primary diagnosis, completely separate from Parkinson's disease. In other words, it can be a primary diagnosis. You can, I think I said that twice. You can have conditions like multiple system atrophy, corticobasal degeneration, progressive supranuclear palsy, And there's even other forms of secondary Parkinsonism that can happen as well. So you can have drug-induced Parkinsonism, you can have vascular Parkinsonism. So there's again all kind of conditions that have some similarities, but they're not PD. It's really it's really kind of a crucial thing to be aware of because I mean it could be for yourself, it could be for the medical professional helping you. Uh, Obviously, a movement disorder specialist, a neurologist who has had a fellowship in this, uh, that that kind of doctor is really going to be more familiar with these separate diagnoses and is probably going to have that on their radar screen. But a lot of neurologists aren't quite as familiar with the other atypical Parkinsonisms or other forms of Parkinsonism, and and you may either get misdiagnosed or again treated for Parkinson's when it's something different. Grandma Shell 23 says I was diagnosed last year at 72. Carbidopa did not help. Did have a tremor or have a tremor in left hand and chin. My doctor never mentioned any other possibility. What should I do? That's a great question. You know, and I don't know if your doctor is a traditional, or I guess I should say typical neurologist or like a general neurologist or a movement specialist. If they're a movement specialist, I would think they would be suggesting other ways to find out what's going on. But a lot of times the general neurologists, they're going to be a little bit. I'm not downplaying neurologists as a profession, but just saying that they're not specialists in movement disorders like Parkinson's or MS, things like that, or Huntington's disease. So, um, as far as what to do from here, I would suggest getting a second opinion. But if the current physician that you have placed you on the traditional medication for it, and you didn't respond to it, that's kind of, for me, is kind of a sign that it could be something different. Tremor in left hand and chin, again, that could be various different atypical Parkinsonisms. So there's not any way just from tremor to maybe diagnose that. And I will talk about this in the video that's upcoming this weekend. So I do want you to stay tuned for that because I do talk about possible diagnostic techniques. But just in brief, there's several different. I can go ahead and talk about it now just for a second. There are several different tests that they can do for specific diagnoses. For example, you know, generally speaking, they can do things like MRI, which that may show something, it may not. MRI might show something like, for example, Lewy bodies. Um, the DAT scans what may not rule out every condition because DAT scan really only looks at the brain's ability to absorb dopamine, and there's more than one condition that could have a positive test with DAT, and then some may not have any result from a DAT scan. It may show completely normal dopamine absorption. Um, so the DAT scan is looking at the dopamine transporter molecule, and so if there's problems with that, uh, which is typical in Parkinson's, you'll see a positive test on the DAT scan. Um, she says he's at the movement clinic at IU. Okay, so I would think that would be a pretty good group, being at IU in Indianapolis. Um, So, did they suggest any other diagnostic testing? Because I would think that they would want to look at either DAT scan, um, maybe doing skin biopsy test for alpha synuclein to see if you have alpha synuclein in the nerve tissue and the outside of the other parts of the body, and also uh, there's actually a relatively new spinal fluid test for that as well. Alpha synuclein is a abnormal protein. I've covered that before in the channel, but um, it's found in Parkinson's disease and primarily very, very common. But at the same time, Lewy body dementia, Lewy bodies are actually big clumps of alpha synuclein aggregates in the brain. So um, you could you could have alpha-synuclein with Lewy body dementia, but as a primary diagnosis, um, or as a primary test, alpha-synuclein shows up with Parkinson's more readily. She said she'd follow up. Yeah, I would. Because lack of response to levodopa does kind of raise an eyebrow for me. Because Parkinson's disease, generally speaking, should respond to levodopa, um, because the lack of dopamine is going to be, you're going to affect the dopamine levels with that. So I guess, at the very least, you don't have to step on toes with this, but at least to ask, maybe propose the question, what else could this be, and can we look into it more? It's an honest question, and frankly, if they haven't suggested that already, I would advocate for yourself, because it's like, well, I need answers because this treatment isn't working. So what else can we do? Um, but so anyway, in the video this weekend, the episode we're going to show, we do talk about all these different conditions in a little bit more detail. It's a relatively longer video, but it's not going to be, super long, but long enough to go into detail on each, on basically four primary atypical Parkinsonisms, and then some minor details about some other types. So, but that is coming up this weekend, and if you didn't, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, there's a I want to mention there's a quiz that you can take to test your Parkinson's knowledge confidence level. And I would invite you to do that. There's a link in the description of this video to do that. Um, and it's just a quick quiz. You get a little result in your email, just to kind of give you an idea of where you stand in terms of how much you really want to learn or need to learn about Parkinson's. And I just think it's kind of a nice idea to check yourself, because you don't know what you don't know sometimes, right? And also check out all the links below. We have a free Facebook group I'd love to have you be a part of, and of course our channel sponsors. So I would appreciate you supporting them, and all that. I don't see. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll because I don't know what's going on with the screen. I can't see anything over here. It's kind of weird. Anyway, that is about it. So I appreciate all of you being here today. Um, and I look forward to seeing you in the live, not say live, in the premiere of the new episode on Saturday. It will be ready 8 a.m. Central Time USA, and I'll be watching with you. So look forward to that, and hope you have a great afternoon. And as always, be empowered. Thanks a lot.